Herbert West Reanimator, explained by an idiot. Herbert West and our unnamed narrator are students at the Miskatonic Medical School in Armitage. West has a theory that living things are nothing more than biological machines, and if you're fast enough, you can restart them before decay sets in. He had some successful tests reanimating animals, but each different species requires its own different version of his reanimation serum, and the results were never fully reanimation. Him and the unnamed narrator asked the college if they can experiment on human bodies, and the college just turns them down. So the narrator and West set up a lab in an abandoned farmhouse. They set up the lab to look like it was just a chemistry lab because if anyone asked any questions, it looks a lot better to look like you're making meth than it does to look like you're trying to make dead people rise, I guess. At first, they were paying people to exhume corpses for their experiments, but they could never get fresh enough ones, so they started exhuming the corpses themselves, but still couldn't get fresh enough ones till they heard about a young construction worker who died that very morning. So under the cover of darkness at night, they dug up the body and they filled the grave back in and made it look immaculate, like no one had ever touched the grave, and they quickly get the body back to their house. They inject the body with one serum and there's no result, nothing happens. But because they don't know when's the next time they're going to get a corpse this fresh, they very quickly change the serum. While they're trying to change the serum in the other room, they hear a blood-curdling screech from the other room, freak out, and run out of the building. They knocked over a lantern on their way out, which set the farmhouse on fire. The next day, they get the news of the farmhouse burning down, but they also see in the news that the grave that they made sure looked immaculate looked like someone had tried to dig in with their own hands to get back into the grave. Months later, West is still trying to get the college to let him test on human corpses. The dean of the college, one Dr. Alan Halsey, is like, "No, that's weird. We don't want you bringing dead people back to life." Around this time, there is a typhoid epidemic in the town, so all the medical students, including West and the unnamed narrator, have to try to help save as many people as they can. West is even unhappy because he is constantly surrounded by corpses, but he doesn't have the time to try to experiment on them. At one point, West and the unnamed narrator take a corpse to the medical area inside the school and try to reanimate it. The only thing that happened was the eyes popped open and looked around kind of erratically, and then it went back to just being a regular dead body. During the same time period, Dr. Alan Halsey becomes a bit of a local hero because of all the work he's put into saving people in the town, but he eventually succumbs to typhoid himself. He became such a hero in the town that the townspeople and all of the students have a huge grand funeral for him. Afterwards, West and a lot of the other students go out drinking to celebrate Halsey's life. While drinking, West and the unnamed narrator get a little too drunk and start talking about the theories of reanimation to the other students, which scares them off. They got even more drunk to the point where they don't remember how they got home. They wake up covered in blood with their landlord freaking out saying they brought another person home with them, and the person got violent at some point in the night and wrecked up their apartment. Over the next several days, there are multiple reports in the town of random attacks, random killings, pets going missing, and possible cannibalism. It puts the entire town in a frenzy. Eventually, they caught the person doing it, and the person's completely mad, won't speak to anyone, just kind of a growling animal, so they put him in an asylum. But people in the town noticed that the person who was attacking everyone looked an awful lot like Dr. Alan Halsey. As it turns out, West and the narrator, while drunk, exhumed the corpse of Halsey and attempted to reanimate him, but even his body was not fresh enough. West and the narrator, after graduating, set up a medical practice on the outskirts of a logging town, weirdly close to a cemetery. They get pretty constant work from the loggers who are in constant brawls and knife fights, while on the side they're still paying people to try to get fresh corpses for them to experiment on, but it's not going so well. In the town, boxing is illegal for some reason, so the loggers have illegal boxing matches. One night, one of these these matches goes really bad, and one of the boxers dies. So West and the narrator are commissioned by the loggers to get rid of the body, but instead of getting rid of the body, they just took it back to their medical practice and attempted to reanimate it. When nothing happens, West and the narrator just take the body out into the meadow and bury it. Over the next several days, there are reports in the town of a missing child. The mother and father of the missing child go to West because the mother is completely hysterical and going crazy. She dies of what appears to be a heart attack, and the father of the child, her husband, decides to attempt to kill West for not being able to save her. Later that night, West and the narrator wake up to a pounding on the door. Right when West opens the door, he immediately shoots all 6 rounds out of the revolver into it, at which point the narrator sees that it is the corpse of the boxer they tried to reanimate a few days prior, with the arm of the missing boy in his mouth. After being away for a while, the narrator comes home to find a corpse in their living room. West explains that this is just some traveling salesman who happened to die of a heart attack in their living room several weeks prior. West then explains that he has created a way to preserve corpses indefinitely using some sort of serum made out of reptile eggs. After this point, West injects the corpse with their reanimation serum, and the body very briefly comes back to life, screaming, "No, get that needle away from me," showing that West had actually just murdered this guy. After this point in the story, the narrator is afraid to leave West's side because he is worried that West will kill him too. Years later, World War I happens, and West and our unnamed narrator go to the front lines as medical personnel. By this point, West and the narrator are no longer just trying to reanimate whole bodies, they're using their reptile egg serum to preserve and reanimate individual limbs from bodies. West has told another scientist named Major Sir Eric Moreland Clapham Lee about the reanimation stuff. One day, Lee's plane gets shot down, and he is partially decapitated. West and the narrator drag him into their medical tent, fully decapitate him, and then inject his body with some quickly made reanimation serum. Very briefly, he comes back to life and his head starts screaming about the plane going down. At this point, a German artillery shell blows up their medical tent, and they can't find any evidence of their experiments or the body of Lee. After this point, West is secretly terrified of a reanimated corpse that knows how to reanimate corpses. Another time jump later, West has bought a new property in another city to set up another medical practice. He gets a state-of-the-art incinerator built into the basement without really explaining why a doctor would need a state-of-the-art incinerator in his basement. Him and the narrator also find weird, early pilgrim catacombs in the basement. At a later point, West reads a news article about a breakout at the asylum in Armitage, where the corpse of Halsey is broken out by a lot of really weird looking dudes and a guy with what is very clearly a wax face. And he carries a bag that is roughly the right size to have a human head in it. This is most likely Major Sir Eric Moreland Clapham Lee. For the entire rest of the day, West is in a pretty much catatonic state, not responding to anything the narrator or anyone else says. That night, however, they get a knock on the door, and 2 really rough, kind of rotten looking dudes give them a box and say it's from Major Lee. So West and the narrator very quickly take the box down to the basement and try to stuff it in the incinerator. While they're doing this, the lights cut out, and the plaster wall that they put up to cover up those catacombs comes crashing down, and a army of zombies, some that were reanimated by West and Lee, some that weren't, come in and rip West apart as punishment for making Lee have to live like this for the rest of his life. The police, however, do not believe our unnamed narrator because the wall is still up, and they think that the narrator just stuck West in the incinerator himself.